Today's webinar, we are going to discuss two very important elements of leadership. While we discuss leadership, we invariably come across certain elements, certain qualities, certain leadership traits which are complementary to each other. And so complementary to each other that separating them becomes little difficult. Today we are going to discuss in this webinar, seventh in the series of Leadership Laboratory, two elements of leadership: positive attitude and motivation. For this, we have two very eminent speakers from very diverse background and with very vast age difference. One side you see a gray haired, soft gentleman who goes by the name of Major General Umang Sethi, ABSM, BSM. He is from that background where the only thing we talk about is leadership. And with him, another speaker is Anand Devraj, who comes from the background where the backbone of entire organization and function is management. But ultimately, whether it is management or whether it is leadership, the organization develops on those qualities of those person who have displayed very conspicuously the element of leadership, which are positive attitude and motivation. Before I start the webinar, I welcome all the participants here. And I start with what was said by Shahid Ram Prasad Biswal. And that shows the attitude. No one can describe the self attitude, the attitude which one develops. And he said very famously, वक्त आने दे दिखा देंगे तुझे आसमां, हम अभी से क्या बताएं कि हमारे दिल में है. So that attitude, when time comes, we will display the real grit, the real strength, the metal, and we will prove our worth. That is, one style of attitude. And then when we talk about motivation, then also there are few lines which are coming to my mind and which are very aptly describing what is motivation. लहरों को साहिल की दरकार नहीं होती, हौसले बुलंद हो तो कोई दीवार नहीं होती, जलते हुए चिराग ने आंधियों से ये कहा कि उजाला देने वालों की कभी हार नहीं होती. That is motivation. So with this little bit of background, may I request General Umang Sethi to make his opening statement, please.
Thank you, Shashi. Today, when we are talking, the basic audience is industry leaders, professionals, and practitioners of leadership. And I have often wondered, leadership is the most discussed phenomenon, and yet I find that surprisingly least understood. Everybody has got his or her own definition of leadership. And that is what is most interesting, challenging, and I think it sets you when you are in the business of leadership. Tells you that there's a lot to learn and a lot to go. I always have attended a number of presentations of private companies, corporates, or government organization. And invariably, when they are describing themselves as an organization, they always project themselves as goal-oriented, proactive, ethical, responsive, and motivated. And exactly this is what we are talking about today. Today, the talk is about two parts, that is positive attitude and motivation. Now, these two aspects affect leaders, the led, and the organization as such. Let me, leader and the led, I will discuss a little later. Give you an example of how an organization's reputation, business, and getting their clients in place or retaining their clients is made. To give you an example, I had a problem with Tata Sky and I corresponded with them. I spoke to the customer care and didn't get very good response. Then I raised the level and went up right up to the CEO's office. Unfortunately, I didn't get too much of response, so I went to the social media. And immediately the things started changing. So that showed that how sensitive are they to their reputation, to their ability to address their attitude. And thereafter, I got a letter of apology from the CEO. And after that, I've continued to remain a customer, and it's been about 3 to 4 years. So the attitude of an organization, how they address things, is a very important thing. Let me come to a few points about positive attitude and motivation. Let's look at the current COVID 19 situation. This is the time where there's a lot of despondency, a lot of unease, and probably people are unsettled about what is happening around because there are no clear pictures. Yet I find that there are people who are looking at positives in this. Like, for instance, going back to the basics, as far as their homes are concerned, learning how to follow what our elders did. We were just discussing Anand himself, like washing our hands when you come home, maintaining proper hygiene, washing your legs, feet, etc. And if you look at it, there are others while you are stuck at home, but the environment has rejuvenated. There are a lot of people who are rejoicing in that. They're playing games, indoor games with their families. They're rediscovering their own family, their ties, their children, and having social fun. So these are the attitudes which people find even in adverse situations. And that is the positive attitude we are talking about. I'm not going to get into the definition of positive attitudes. These are too mundane, and I suppose the leadership which is attending this webinar or might see it later is quite aware of that. The fundamental is to look at everything which is the best, trying to find good out of everything. It's called being an eternal optimist. The guy who invented the aeroplane and the guy who invented the parachute both were optimists. So it is the optimist who delivers, and the optimist is a result of the positive attitude which he or she has had. Attitude in Hindi would mean ravaiya, or in Devanagari we would call it manovrishti. Ravaiya theek nahi hai. The way he behaves, the way he looks at problems is not right. That is how people look at each other. Now, well, over the years, I have realized it is individual thoughts which develop into an attitude in later years. Thoughts are a result of your upbringing, sanskar. Thoughts are also a result of your experiences. Thoughts are also a result of your reading, of the knowledge which you acquire over the period of time. And all that which the environment around you takes place creates thoughts. And those thoughts become your habits. For instance, uh, for instance, we have most of us have grown up in the armed forces background, so there is a tendency to do something in the morning to keep yourself physically active. So what you do is now at this age also, get up early in the morning. I do whatever little exercise. I have a small regime of meditation, exercise, pranayama, and so on and so forth. It is because I think it is important to remain fit. As a leader, what I found that the leader who thinks he's going to be positive and proactive, He needs to be head of his organization. If he is working at the same time as his organization starts working, then he would be reacting to situations. I have always found that those leaders who start earlier than their organization and spend time with themselves in the morning, think through how the day is going to pan out and how are they going to do various things, have already thought through most of the issues which are going to come up during the day. They are able to guide, lead, and create an environment in which people do not react. People are responding, and they are responsive. That is what is which all creates positive attitude in a person. What is important is positive person will always see an opportunity in a challenge. Give you an example. During when the COVID-19 situation started and we went into the first lockdown, on CNBC, the CEO of Anand came up. And these were the early days when the transportation hadn't started very well and things were not in place. So the supply chain was still not functioning. And yet, this man was overly optimistic. He said, people are calling me up, the chief secretaries of different states, and asking what do you want us to do. Because everybody realized that milk is perhaps one of the most important requirements of every human being and it must reach. So he said, I'm concentrating on sending milk. So whatever extra is left, I'm going to convert into butter, cheese, and other products, which I'm going to use later because this demand will come up later. So he saw an opportunity in a challenge which was posed to him. And that is what is finding good in every situation and doing something to act. No, every person acts according to experiences. Let me explain this. Experiences, if you've had bad experiences in a particular situation and that situation occurs again, then what happens is that person's mind automatically tells him, don't go there. There's danger there. So his or her reactions are going to be accordingly factored. Give an example from World War II. Erwin Rommel, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel, was made in charge of beaches where the Normandy landing took place. While in Africa, he lost most of his battles because of the air power of the British. So what he did, he was so concerned about the air strikes of the Allied forces that he always kept looking up. And the invasion took place from the seaward side, and he was quite a kind of taken aback. So your mind conditions you in a difficult situation based on your experiences. And that is the time when a leader has to convert that negative thought into positive. How does he convert this into positive? Is what is leadership all about. We can talk about it a little later. Let me talk a few points about motivation. Motivation in Hindustani would mean prerna. Now, prerna is something or which inspires you. When we talk of prerna, we are talking of inspiration. Now, the inspirations can come from idols, can come from the people whom you think have done well in life, or people who are sublime, noble souls, or people who achieve much in life, or organizations which have done very well. Like, for instance, Tatas have a very small attrition rate as compared to any other company. It is basically because anybody who joins Tatas, lives with Tatas, retires from Tatas because of the company ethos. So that is one organization which motivates people to join it because of its ethos, culture, and the way things happen there. Now, the motivation can be both positive and negative. It could be a desire to do something positive, like for instance, Bikram Batra, when he was standing and somebody asked him, you have captured this feature today and you're going to go up tomorrow. So what is your plan? He said, Dil mange more, and that became the tagline. They picked up from one of the popular soft drinks. And that is what has exemplified Vikram Batra. That is positive to achieve more, to deliver more, to get his another objective for his country, which had been occupied by the enemy, or to accomplish the mission which was laid down for his unit. Similarly, I can give you another example from the private world, but it will be the repetition of the same. But then the motivation will also be to do not to do something. Like for instance, I can be motivated not to act in a particular circumstances. Like most people do not act in a very uh, bad way on the social media. That is another kind of motivation. Or it could be entirely negative. I could become a part of a mob which goes in for looting, what we are seeing in the United States today. Now, the motivation has to be channelized in a particular manner which is positive and gets to a positive results both for the individual, organization, and the leader. He himself has to create that environment and he has to lead himself. Simulation or stimulation, sorry, the word wrong, stimulation into achieving a goal is what is motivation all about. I'll give you an example from the armed forces in this again. In 1965, there was a battle law going on in Punch area for a picket called Raja. Two attacks had failed, or one attack had failed earlier. So another infantry battalion volunteered to go, and as they are attacked, Pakistanis were ready and they fought onto them and they suffered a lot of casualties. But the commanding officer had promised his brigade commander that I'm going to deliver Raja to you. So when he realized that the troops were not able to move because of the tremendous amount of fire, he tied his jersey around his waist and he got up and he said, Chalo. And the whole battalion got up and the attack started and all fury was let loose and the objective was captured. While this was happening, he was hit and he was badly wounded. But he did not allow himself to be evacuated. He continued to stay there and he continued to monitor the situation, inspire his command. When the objective was captured and he was told, objective is captured, he was no more. In the folklore, in an army, it is said, Raja Lita, Raja Ditta. Matlab, we captured Raja, but we gave a king and a lion. This is what the leader does in a difficult situation. For instance, your businesses aren't doing very well. Then what do? You innovate. You come out with situations. Like, for instance, now the businesses aren't doing very well. So they innovate. For instance, there's a company which used to take advances before they could give stuff because that is how the demand and supply thing was working. Now, post-COVID situation, they're allowing people to buy things on credit, and as they get the things from their vendors or clients, they can make a payment. And they've also decided to hold a price line despite the dollar going to $76. So with this, the profit margins have reduced, volumes have increased, but the brand loyalty has increased 200%. People have realized that here the company will save us. Now that is what motivation of the leader was to stimulate everybody around for.
Thank you
So
very much,
I
sir.
will
Thank you very much, sir.
stop
At
here
this
now.
point, yeah, thank you very much, sir. Uh, you have covered both the elements, positive attitude and motivation. The examples are very profound and very relevant here. I go to Anand Devraj, and by now, those who have joined a little late, for their benefit, we are discussing two important elements of leadership: positive attitude and motivation. And there are two speakers. You have heard so far Jan Umang Sethi. Now, Anand Devraj, who comes from a very different background than the armed forces. Anand Devraj is leading a very competent, talented, and creative team. And controlling, managing a creative team which works under very liberal, work culture is big challenge. So Anand will take now about what is his understanding and how he relates himself in leadership position so far as these two elements are concerned. And I will request him to give personal example or example from his sector. Anand, over to you.
Thank you, Captain Sir. Thank you, General Sir. First of all, very happy Sunday to all of you, and I hope everyone is safe and continue to stay safe. So I had the honor to participate in a couple of earlier sessions, and a lot of different leadership traits were discussed in those sessions. So I am not going to actually talk about leadership in general, nor I'm going to give some. I plan to give any lecture on leadership here because I don't think that is my forte. What I plan to do is draw from my experience and give what my understanding is about leadership, especially related to positive attitude and motivation. And I hope some of those experiences, connect with you. And I am, hoping for a very engaging discussion, post our introductory messages. So, first thing that comes to my mind is a subtle difference between management and leadership, or manager and leadership. The way we typically look at it is, when I say we, I mean the industry that I have been part of for the last couple of decades. The way we look at it is, manager is somebody who has people working for him or her, and leader is somebody who has people following him or her. And though this difference may seem very subtle, it's very important in the context of leading a team, however small or big that team may be. And I'll come to that piece later when we talk more in detail about positive attitude and motivation. So why do people want to become leaders, right? They want to become for a variety of reasons. They want to be rewarded for all the hard work they have done. They want power. They want recognition. There could be multiple reasons, but is having those kind of ambitions enough to become a leader? I don't think so. And that is where this topic of positive attitude and motivation is so important. And General Sir put it so very nicely when he gave examples about COVID-19 situation and how positive attitude can take a lot of can have a lot of good takeaways which will make you feel good, right? So I'm going to talk about similar things. Um, it is often said that employees and your direct reports, they exhibit the behavior of leaders or managers. So if a manager happens to have a lukewarm attitude or negative attitude, or always thinking that, oh, if this fails, then what will happen? How should we cover that up? Then I don't think that leader or manager can have a very bright future. So the team will also go on that same path, and it is more of a vicious circle where people will try to get or extricate themselves out of issues rather than looking at the big picture and trying to solve and go beyond those issues. And that is where a leader, one of the most important trait is positive attitude, right? And the way I look at it is, some sub traits of positive attitude are that is for a leader necessarily to exist. One is, at least that is what I follow personally, don't act as if you know everything. Okay, that is something which is very very which gives an air of superiority, at least in our industry. Okay, we I don't think I know everything, or I don't claim to know everything. So that's very important. And second one is pass credit of success to your team, and that gives a huge step in positive attitude. And the third one is have the integrity and don't lie and own up your failures. If these three sub traits are practiced, one part of positive attitude automatically comes into your mind. And as General Sir said, positive attitude is something which has to be developed. Work has to be done. A lot of effort has to be spent to develop a positive attitude. It is the story of the half glass, I mean, the glass half full or half empty. People see by their mind, how their mind is tailored ever since their childhood, their upbringing, their experiences. If you ask one person who is a little negatively inclined, how is this glass? He will say it is half empty. Or if you ask a guy who's full of positive attitude, automatically it comes out to him that this glass is half full. So this is something which social scientists use it as an example a lot of time. One more example I was reading some time back, and I really want to put it down here because we do read a lot of these management books, and many of these books, they are repetitive. They talk about the same things but in different ways, in different wordings. But one thing which really particularly stuck me was there was a survey conducted some time back about among the patients, asking them or telling them that the success rate for this surgery is 70%. One group of patient was told the success rate of this surgery is 70%. And the other group of patients, they were told the failure rate of this surgery is 30%. And the outcome of that particular survey was people who were told that 70% success rate of this surgery, they gave a thumbs up. Okay, the surgery will be successful. And the other group were told that 30% of people having this surgery, it's a failure. They gave a thumbs down to this process. So that proves that positive attitude is something which, number one, has to be presented in the right way. When you present things to your mind in the right way, you start developing the positive attitude. And number two, negative attitude linger on for a longer time than positive attitude. An extension to this particular example is the same group of people who gave a thumbs down were later told that 70% of surgery is successful, but they still said no, 30% is still failure, which means that negative thought which got into their mind lingers on. And that is exactly what the message General Sir was giving, that it comes automatically from your mind, from your experiences, from your tragedies or whatever. And that is where positive attitude is something which is not inbuilt, which is not inborn, but it has to be developed, and it has to be nurtured, and it has to be very, very cautiously guarded. Just like all the distinguished people here have, have been at some point in their life soldiers doing such a distinguished duty of guarding the nation. Similarly, for positive attitude, the mind has to be guarded. The mind has to be judiciously guarded to make sure that the negative thoughts don't creep in, and there is a room for positive energy and positivity. So that is why this trait is so important. Not all leaders have that. Not all leaders cultivate that, and that is where we see people failing, teams failing, projects failing. Motivation is another thing which is closely linked with this
चार्जर लाया तो
positive
चाहिए, ये
attitude.
वाले भी चाहिए, उसको
But
बोलो कि वो खरीद रहा है, फिर पैसे दे देते हैं.
But in between positive attitude and motivation, there is one thing which I feel is a bridge, and that bridge is self-confidence. Self-confidence, somebody has told this. I don't remember who it is. Somebody has told this, that confidence is a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. So honestly, I don't talk in webinars that often, especially in front of unknown people. But the more I start talking in these kind of webinars, in front of distinguished audience, in front of unknown people, the confidence increases and you become stronger and stronger. So the moment the confidence increases, your positive attitude increases. And when your positive attitude increases, the motivation aspect is something which automatically comes into play. Now, I'll give an example in our industry. How do we motivate people? Our industry has issues with attrition. There are no lifelong IT company employees. I mean, there may be, but there are very few. The attrition rate in IT industry is 20%. Sometimes it can go as high as 25%. Second one is the joining people who join, what we call as pre-join attrition. People who join or who have accepted the offer but don't show up on the joining date, that is very high, close to 10 to 12%, which means if I select a person, I have no guarantee this person will join. I'll have to select two people. And if two people happen to join, then I am stuck with surplus and I don't know what to do. And that impacts my financials. So what what motivates people to join a company? What motivates people to stay in a company? There are just three or four things. One is the right leadership. People join a company, but they leave the manager. They don't leave the company, they leave the manager. So if they say that, okay, Tata's, great company, I'm going to join Tata's on the IT side, of course. But if they are put under a manager who is full of negativity, full of criticism, the person is not going to stay, he's going to leave. So number one aspect of motivating employees is having the right leader manage the team. There are other things that we typically practice in an IT industry from a motivation perspective, and those are typically what we do is we try to build relationship, which is something which you know all of you people do in your respective industries, but we go a step further because of the liberal environment, because of the way things are structured in the IT industry. We give them multiple perks like work from home. We give them perks like every Friday we'll throw lunches and we'll throw buffet for you. Just have fun, enjoy. Then if there is a real good year or a real good quarter, financial and monetary bonuses follow the employees. So motivation, and then the work environment, the kind of work environment many IT companies give is very casual in nature. People are allowed to come in jeans or shorts. People don't work on desk, they sit on bean bag and they work on bean bags. And then people have very flexible working hours. They come at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and leave at 5 o'clock, because we at least have begun to believe that it is not the hours that count, it is the output that counts. It doesn't matter the output comes from where, whether it comes from your sitting at home or sitting on a beach, or you go and work in the office and slog out 9 hours. So those are some of the motivational techniques that typically we employ in our industry. And to just give an example about this positive attitude and motivation relating to our current situation of COVID-19, right? COVID-19 has been very bad for us because, as you know, IT industry is predominantly dependent on US business. 70% of revenue comes from US. But US is extremely or very, very severely impacted. US is, in fact, the topmost country which is reeling under the COVID-19 problems. And we know in the next few months, there will be a lot of businesses that will file for bankruptcy, that will go bust, and it will impact our top line, it will impact our overall industry. But as a positive looking and a forward looking manager or as a company, some of the positive traits that we have figured out is we need to cut cost. Yes. How? Because of COVID-19, now we realize that our entire staff can work from home. Why do we even need an office? We pay lakhs of rupees per month for office rent. Do we really need it? We don't need it. 3 months since the lockdown, we have been completely working from home and we have been 120% productive. So why do we need an office? So that is a silver lining in all the darkness that is there around COVID-19. And I'm sure as we still dig deeper to find the silver linings, we will find more and more positive traits, more and more silver lining in the overall dark gloom that this COVID-19 has spread. So if every management, if all the managers think that until there is a doomsday, there is no doomsday, there is always going to be something which is going to be a silver lining. I'm sure the team can be motivated, and I'm sure they will be responsible for a very efficient and a very well run team.
Anand, I heard with all attention under my command, and I deeply appreciate the insight which you bring about the specific industry to which you belong to. And I was wondering, in the background while you were speaking, that if there was another speaker who was 20 years younger to you, or your age, because presently two speakers, Jan Umang Sethi and you, difference is half the age. He's you are in 40s and he's in late 70s. So आपके मुकाबले में कोई और भी स्पीकर लेकर आते जिसकी उम्र आपसे आधी होती, उसके भी थॉट प्रोसेस, उसकी भी थॉट की मैच्योरिटी वही होती जो आपकी है। वो मैं इसलिए कह रहा हूं कि जब आप एज इज ए मटेरियल, व्हेन यू हैव रीच्ड अ पोजीशन ऑफ लीडर, then imperative of being a leader is as such which matures your outlook. If you do not have same matured outlook, you cannot succeed as a leader. And if by fluke you have reached that leadership position, you cannot for long remain as a leader. So the purpose of calling this series as leadership laboratories, someone asked, and I wanted to highlight him, and I am sure he is listening, that purpose of calling this series as leadership laboratory is experiment how different background, how different age group, established leaders, how they think similarly. Their thought process, their approach to life, their approach to challenges remain same. So when you ended with very positive note, I would add little bit here and say that अब हवाएं ही करेंगी रोशनी का फैसला, अब हवाएं ही करेंगी रोशनी का फैसला, जिस दिए में जान होगी वो दिया रह जाएगा। तो जो है, जिसमें कुव्वत है, जिसमें कैपेबिलिटी है, जिसमें टैलेंट है, जिसमें क्रिएटिविटी है, जिसमें पॉसिबिलिटी है, जो प्रोबेबिलिटी को एक्सप्लोर कर सकता है सक्सेसफुली, वो लीडर जो है बचेगा। और वैसे ही ऑर्गेनाइजेशन, इस तरह के लीडरशिप वाले ऑर्गेनाइजेशन ही बचेंगे, whether it is COVID or any other challenge. So now with this little statement, I go over to Jan Umang Sethi. Jan Umang Sethi, your screen is off. Can you switch on your screen and come online?
Yeah.
Your screen is still not visible. Yes, fine. Thank you very much, sir. तो मैं आपसे ये पूछना चाह रहा था कि आप डिफरेंट एज पर, डिफरेंट पोजीशन पर लीडर रहे हैं, चाहे प्लाटून कमांडर हो या डेव कमांडर हो, ये किसी भी लेवल की कमांडरशिप है, तो इट इज ऑल अबाउट लीडरशिप एंड इट इज ऑल अबाउट कीपिंग योर ट्रूप्स, योर कमांड हाईली मोटिवेटेड एंड विद पॉजिटिव एटीट्यूड। तो आपने जो विक्रम बत्रा की बात बताई थी, ऐसी बहुत सारी एग्जाम्पल आपकी लाइफ में आई होंगी। तो प्रोबेबली दिस इज द स्टेज वेयर when we are talking about these two attributes of leaders, we can have little personal example or example from your background, how leadership and motivation is infused to your command.
Oh, okay. There are armed forces is only about business of leadership. You are born, uh, you are trained to be a leader, and leadership starts with the day one of your life. I'll give you one small example how it starts. Uh, I was a young officer, and there was a major exercise on, and we were getting into a place where I was told to go and find out some information. And we went pretty close to the exercise enemy. Now, most of us who are attending this webinar are from the services background. They would empathize with me, and those who don't, I'll try and make it as simple as possible. Now, naturally, you could be caught and you would be made an exercise prisoner of war, and it causes reasonable amount of embarrassment. So we got so close that I got a little scared, honestly, that if I'm caught, then what will happen? And there were 4 or 5 people with me. So what I did, I immediately withdrew from there. But when I withdrew a little, I realized that I hadn't done my job for which I was sent. I was sent to find out certain amount of information. I was still scared, but the job had to be done. So I went back, found out that information, and came back. So the basic issue, what is trying to say is that mission accomplishment in armed forces is a primary reason for leadership. Leader, despite his or her fears, has to lead in difficult, volatile, ambiguous situations and deliver the mission. Now, these are only possible if you are able to remain positive. Yes, I will succeed in this. So the battle in your mind starts much before you actually start executing. Now, let's look at a small thing. Like, for instance, if you have to fight, you're playing football tomorrow, and the striker has to think about how I'm going to create avenues for going ahead because the other side has got very strong defense line and half line. How do I create a web so that I distract them and create avenues for scoring goals? So the mind starts playing the game. He starts thinking, this is where I will dribble, this is where I will pass, this is how I'll position myself, and this will I reach. So he has won the game before he's arrived on the field. Once the game is won in your mind first, and then you win it on ground. Now that is what is important for us. So you have to give auto suggestions. When you give auto suggestions, then it becomes easier for you to tackle situations. There are numerous examples in combat situation which one could give, but one would like to say that there are two thoughts which come to you in every situation. One is chinta and other is chintan. One is the thought of fear, to flee, and other is to stay and do your job. Now that is what is training your mind to deliver that. And that's exactly what leaders do. This is what they don't do it for themselves, they also do it for the led. Because the job of a leader is to create leaders, he is to create leadership. I understand that in the corporate world, attrition all across the industry is between 20 to 25%. Anand did mention about his own. But the point is, in IT industry, people continue to stay in IT industry. In majority of them, but some of them leave IT industry and join something else. As you grow in life, because the avenues become different, you become more of manager than you can do management of anything. Similarly, in other industries also, people remain within that industry. They may shift from one organization to another, to another, to another. And if they remain in the same industry, then they work in the same environment, although the individuals they work with changes. But if the attitude is positive, the attitude is to deliver, then you can change the environment around you as a leader and create conducive conditions to nurture your people. I'll give you an example. I joined an organization, I was helping them in skill development. And one of the strategy meeting with the management, which I attended since I was a consultant and I was called, there was a talk about a particular manager being sacked. And he was to be sacked at the end of this meeting, and a notice had to be served. I'd seen that boy, and somehow it struck me that this guy is not even delivering 10% of his potential. So I told the chairman of the company, I said, you give me a couple of months and don't sack him today. You've suffered so much, give him 2 months, and then you can take a call. He looked at me, my gray hair and everything else. He said, okay, generally you can go ahead and do what you need. Now, these 2 months, that man transformed. He was given a motivation that I told him as the situation stood that you're going to be sacked. The choice is, do not think of it. Think of something positive. Think of what you can deliver. At the same time, we got a contract from Bank of America to train their guards and people who would accompany the people who come for jobs, the boys and girls who come to the call centers. So the whole new system of training had to be devised. I threw him to the wolves. He would get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and be there. He will try and come back. I would ask him questions. I won't tell him what to do. I would ask him what is required as an end state. And today he is a CEO of a company. And the company, another company he joined later, he had become so invaluable here that the management didn't want to leave and he wanted to leave. But he got a job as a CEO of another company, so he sidestepped into the same field. And when I met the owner of that company, he told me, sir, this boy is a tremendous asset. So you have to, as leader, your job is to create an environment in which a person finds fulfillment and his needs are met. In India, we have the Chanakya Darshan in which we talk of Sam, Dam, Dand, Bhed. Now, these he talked in a particular context. But when I read Alvin Toffler and Hedy Toffler's book War and Anti-War many years back, and I realized that this guy talks knowledge is power. He talks about IT, knowledge, etc., etc. But the underlying line is knowledge is power. Then he says money is power in hierarchy, number two. Number three, muscle power. And that is where he ends. But Chanakya goes a way forward. He calls it Bhed, which is basically Rajniti. But if I look at it from the management perspective, it is astuteness, it is shrewdness, how you handle your situation. So as a leader, you got to incentivize by at the superior most level is knowledge. By imparting knowledge to imparting inspiration to being a role model for a person to achieve something for which an end state should be clearly laid. And the leader must have a plan how to achieve that end state from where the person organization is and what are the milestones to be achieved. And those milestones need to be reviewed as you go along. Everybody will require different motivation depending upon the circumstances from where he or she comes from. Now, that is the job of a leader to create. Like, for instance, another issue. I was listening to a very good motivational lecture this morning, preparing for this. And this guy gave an example of a rider and a horse. He says the rider is riding the horse, and he goes on and he says, okay, and he comes across an obstacle. He says, jump. The horse reacts and he jumps. He does something which those who are riders will understand. He has to give certain amount of uh, command to the horse by pressing his knees and the the heels. And then the second obstacle comes. He says, jump. The third obstacle comes, jump. The fourth obstacle is misdirected. His mind is not in place. The horse automatically jumps again. Now, that is what is you have to create an environment where people start reacting positively. It becomes a part of muscle memory. In armed forces, the first thing when we are taught, we are told to how to handle a weapon, and we are told to strip it and assemble it. At one point of time, your eyes are tired, you are in a dark environment, and you're told strip it and open it. I personally feel if a rifle is given to me, I can still open it and assemble it back in 60 seconds. Now, this is what is happening as a leader, where where you create a condition for people to achieve things by making it part of their habit and issues. I would stop here and I'll come back in case required.
Arun, where General Umang Shetty has left, I request you to start from that point and share with you how someone in your position, either you or someone in your position, would motivate, put enthusiasm to your team, and lead them for achieving the objective. What are the strategy or what are the tools which you would use in your sector?
Yeah. So, motivation, as again, I'm quoting General Sir, as as he mentioned, motivation is not something where we uniformly apply, just like we apply a butter on a bread uniformly. We can't do that to all the employees in a uniform way. Motivation is something which is very customized, very tailor made, and each employee has different needs, has different requirements for motivation. So, it may look very difficult if you have a large team, if everybody has different motivational needs, motivational requirements, then how am I even going to motivate my team? It may look very, very difficult and very, a kind of intimidating, but thankfully, the reality is that it is not that difficult to generalize that and keep the team motivated as such. Now, there are probably three or four things that I personally do to motivate the team, especially in these crisis time. If everything is going fine, if the company is doing really well, if the business is doing really well, people 50% become self motivated. They know that, oh, my company is doing really well, so I don't need to worry about the job. I don't need to worry about what will happen if they fire me. So kind of 50% of the problem is solved. The remaining 50% the management has to do. But in these troubled times, people have fear of losing the job. People have fear of getting another job in the market, and that impacts the performance, and that impacts the overall company performance as well. So how do I motivate, or how what are my thoughts about this? Number one is, the most important thing that I feel is, make your employees participative in every decision that you make or company makes. Now, in a big company, it may be a little difficult. If you say TCS, which has 1.6, which has 2.6 lakh employees, how can every employee be part of decision making? Yes, they can be, at least from their team's perspective. Their team is 20 strong, 25 strong, 30 strong. So, as a manager, as a leader, most important thing is you need to involve your team in decision making, or at least consult them. Do not unilaterally command or impose decisions on them, and then they will feel that I am left out, and that will make them demotivated, and they will more or less get back onto you. So, number one is involve them or at least consult them in the decision making process. That is number one. Number two, keep the communication line totally open, completely open. Every single message, unless it is super, super confidential, every single message should be delivered to them. Transparency is the key. If they feel that my manager is transparent, my manager can tell me whatever I am lacking or whatever I am not good at. I don't need to be fearful about him. So that transparency is something very important to keep the team motivated, especially during the troubled times. The other forms of motivation are, you need to, as a leader, show your vulnerability. I'm not sure if this is something which will be very widely received, especially given that people come from armed forces background, where you need to be tough, where you need to be in command of the situation. But at least I'm talking from my experience. If I show to my team that I am vulnerable, I am in the same boat as you are, and I am as much blindsided in some of the future things as you are, as can anyone tell. If some employee asks me, when will this COVID-19 end, or what will happen 6 months down the line, can I tell him that, hey, don't worry, by October, vaccine should be out, and by November, everybody will get vaccine and we all should be good? No, that will be a wrong message. That will give you an air of superiority, so thinking that you know everything, and then people will feel a little intimidated by you, which will ultimately lead them to be distant from you and lead you to some dissatisfaction and demotivation. Instead, if you tell them that, look, I don't know what will happen, but we are in this together. I am as much clueless as you are, but if this thing impacts our company, you will be the first person to know that. That much you can be assured. That will give him a feeling of psychological safety. And when you know that you are safe, whether it is a baby or whether it is a grown up person, when you know that you are psychologically safe, self motivation automatically creeps into you. So one of our, in my company, we go by core values, obviously, which I don't need to explain to you. All of you have impeccable core values, but there are four core values that we typically go by, and one of them is psychological safety, which is, if you ask questions, don't think that people will think that I don't know anything. Be free to ask questions. Nobody will tell that you are stupid because you are asking a question. Similarly, extending this psychological safety to the management and to the leaders, it is the job of the manager and the leader to make sure that each of the employees is psychologically safe. If your employees are not psychologically safe, you have failed in your job as a manager, as a leader, to motivate them, to inspire them. I mean, there is a question in the chat which says, what is the difference between motivation and inspiration? Right? And it's kind of interrelated. Motivation is something where I would say the management or the leaders need to go on a top down basis, whereas inspiration is more from a bottom top basis, where you look at your leader and you get inspired. I want to be like him. If he leaves the company, I want to join him in whatever, in whichever company he goes. Now that is what is inspiration. And a motivation and inspiration, when they go hand in hand, that is what makes you a true leader. And that is what separates you from so many other ordinary leaders.
Thank you, Anand. In fact, with your sharp attention to things happening all around you, You made my job very easy. You already answered few questions which were raised, and Murli, your question is already answered. So wait for next question, phrase it, and shoot it at will. Now another question which comes from Brigadier Nevrekar. Brigadier Nevrekar, can you ask your question, please? Brigadier Nevrekar.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you, but we can't see you.
Yeah.
Switch on your screen.
Now can you see me?
No. Anyway, ask your question, please.
Okay. One of my questions was, we talk about motivation and inspiration in the separate terminologies. Now, are they really different, or they're just interchangeable terminologies?
You have any
Hello, could you hear me?
specific speaker in mind?
Beg your pardon?
You have any specific speaker in mind to whom you are asking question, or anyone can take? Anyway,
Oh,
sir.
either one can.
Anyway,
Yeah.
yes, sir.
Okay, I'll take this on. Anand gave one example of inspiration. To my mind, inspiration is a tool to motivate. Inspiration is about a leader. Inspiration is about handling a crisis. Inspiration is about how the organization works. Inspiration is essentially a tool to motivate. Like, for instance, let me elaborate this a little. Uh, Again, going by the same example which I talked about, the battle leading, and it was his inspiration at that critical point of time when it seemed everything was getting lost. It was not lost completely, and his particular action turned the tide. Now, let me explain this a little more so that it becomes a way understood and how I look at the corporate world. A crisis is never delegated. The leader has to stand at higher pedestal and take the responsibility. One of the attributes of a leader is delegation. Now, when he delegates, he gives his authority to somebody to do the job on his behalf. But in the organizational framework, the responsibility still remains of the leader to deliver. Now, this is where the leader must inspire confidence in the led or the person who's been given that delegation to do this in a particular time frame. But as far as the leader is concerned, he should be very clear in his mind that what is the last time, what will be the last situation when I can retrieve the situation, even if it is going to datum zero, and yet deliver in time as far as the organization is concerned. Now, that is called inspirational leadership. A leader is inspirational, and the environment he creates inspires people to work with him, to work for a cause, and to deliver the ends of that organization.
When you are about to conclude this webinar as a speaker, what would you like to share with us as parting gift? So I am asking, a parting gift from you. And Anand, next would be similar request to you. To John Sethi, sir.
Okay, I would recommend for a leader to become a motivator, to become a person who can inspire positive attitude among people. And the second part I would like to to share my experiences, that empathy, hamdardi, sympathy, samvedna. These are essentials for people to get motivated, for people to feel valued in an organization. And there has got to be emotional connect with the leader. with the organization, जिसे हम भावात्मक जुड़ाव कहते हैं, that is what is important. And finally, everybody should be aligned to the vision of the leader and the company and the organization as such. And that is what makes armed forces a little different, because everybody is aligned to the vision of the Indian armed forces. That is defense of India no matter what, nation first no matter what. So whether it's the junior most soldier through the CDS, everybody understands nation first always and every time. Now that is the kind of motivation we require even in the civil sector. So these are my last few thoughts, and thanks for having me around.
Anand,
Yes.
anything from
Can you
you?
hear me? I have some connection problems. Can you
Yes,
hear me
we
now?
can hear you.
Okay. Yeah. What I would finally like to conclude on this leadership, positive attitude and motivation is that there are 5 or 6 things I would like to very quickly, make it as a bullet point. One is, for every leader, especially focusing on these two traits, positive attitude and motivation. For every leader, harmonize and match the needs of your team members. Leadership is never an easy job, it is a full time job. So, number one, you need to understand your team very, very intimately, as well as you maybe understand your family. So harmonize and understand the needs, and that boils down to being empathy. Do not always talk about work with them. Talk about families. They may be 15 years junior to you. Talk about their families. Talk about their personal ambitions or goals or whatever. So always work will keep them at an arm's distance. When you immediately talk to them about their family, makes them bring closer. Second one, appreciation and rewards. Never fall short of appreciating, and you don't need to always give them monetary reward, but just a pat on the back, appreciate them. Hey, well done, and keep it doing in front of 15 people, 20 people. Really, really motivates them, and it helps them go for the better and better goals. Third one, be a role model. Gone are those days where managers thought that sitting in the cabin, being on the chair, and signing and approving papers, their job is done. No, be the role model, which is, do not forget, do not fall shy of rolling up your sleeves and doing the work that they are also doing. That is very important. That gives them, somebody to look up to. That is what inspiration. Fourth one, as I mentioned earlier, involve them in decision making. Make sure that they are felt wanted. They are felt, part of your organization. Number fifth, make sure you develop team spirit and develop the morale of the team. And there are various tools of doing that. I know for lack of time, we cannot go into that. And then last one is, as I said, step into the shoes of your team members before yelling at them, before shouting at them, and criticizing them in front of 10 people, which will demotivate them, you know, which will inspire a culture of gossip, inspire a culture of sidestepping the leader and going somewhere else, and talking about the leader. All those are very toxic for the organization. So step into the shoes of the person and find out why he or she has done this. If you were in that shoes, would you be doing the same thing? That will help you, what General Sir said, to be empathetic towards your team. And that empathy is a very, very underlying thing that is important to motivate your team.
At this point, I do not see any questions coming up, and I want to wrap up the webinar with my heartfelt gratitude and thanks to eminent speakers, and also to the participants who have spared very precious time, and request to them that next webinar would be on 19th June, and make sure that you attend it, because that will be the last webinar we will have under Leadership Laboratory series. And when I say next, means that will be the next only, not the last. We will continue further with our effort to make youngsters, especially youngsters, aware of leadership, aware of patriotism, aware of how they can contribute towards nation building. And with my immense, heartfelt gratitude, I like to now take your permission and close this webinar with one line which will surely be found very relevant, especially during COVID time. जो तूफानों में पलते जा रहे हैं वही दुनिया बदलते जा रहे हैं। तो आज जो सख्त टाइम है, जो कि मुश्किल भरा टाइम है, वो भी बदल जाएगा। कल को अच्छा टाइम आएगा और वहीं ऐसे अच्छे टाइम में वो लीडरशिप आके दुनिया को संभालेंगे, हमारे देश को संभालेंगे, जो ग्राउंडेड है, मैच्योर है, मोटिवेट करना जानते हैं, जो अपने टीम को साथ लेके ऑब्जेक्टिव को अचीव करना जानते हैं। With that, I thank you once again very much to everyone, and I close the meeting now.